he really looked me in my eye and he's like, "What are you gonna do about it, man? Like, if you are really this mad and this upsets you this much, and you're crying over this, if you really don't want them to talk about this, man up and give them something else to talk about." And I don't know why those words just resonated and lit a fire under my ass so hard, but man, I never forgot about that. And from that point on, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna figure this shit out. Like, I don't care if it takes 6 years, 6 months, like whatever it takes, I'm gonna figure it out. And I mean, I think I spent the next 2 weeks like MIA and hiding just on YouTube, watching every 100 plus pound transformation you can think of. And I literally would make graphs or like Venn diagrams of like, okay, in this column, this guy said calorie counting is essential. In this column, this guy said do a lot of cardio. This guy said do strength training. This guy said this. And I found all the common denominators of people who found success.
That is Aamir Madadali this week on the Do It For Yourself podcast. Hey, my friend, welcome back to another episode here on the Do It For Yourself podcast. My name is Ian, and I am your host. This is my podcast, and I am very, very thankful that you have found your way here. If you have come here through my guest Aamir's profile today, welcome to the show. We are super happy to have you here and bring you into this community. If you are one of the longtime listeners, obviously, as I say all the time, I really appreciate your support on the podcast here. With that being said, if you could do me a huge favor and just take a couple minutes right now to leave a review for the podcast on whatever app that it is you are using to listen to this podcast, I would greatly appreciate that. It helps me out a ton, and it's just going to take a couple minutes of your time. So, my guest today, is Aamir. Aamir started his weight loss journey because he was the butt of a joke for his group of friends during a Christmas Pollyanna. And they had given him a scale kind of as a joke, but Aamir was laughing at the time, but didn't really take it as a joke. And he decided to take that as an opportunity to really take control of his life and turn things around. And he did just that, going on to document his whole journey on Instagram of losing 130 pounds. So we get into kind of that initial story, and then we detail through the rest of Aamir's story and how he's gone on to lose 130 pounds, some of the things that he's done, some of the tips that he may have for people. So I will let Aamir do the rest of the talking here, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation. I'm ready if you are, man.
Yeah, let's get cracking.
Let's get it. So, Aamir, I just want to take a minute right up front, of course, to say thank you for jumping on with me here on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to getting into your story. One of your friends had tagged you in a post that I had kind of commented on. And long story short, we got connected, and as soon as you sent me, your before and after, and told me what you were all about, I knew that I had to get you on the podcast here. So if you could just do me a favor, give a quick couple points about who you are and what you're up to.
Yeah, man. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you, for giving me this platform today. So my name is Aamir. People know me as Captain America on Instagram. About me, I used to be a 330-pound guy, lost 130 pounds. Just so happened to be brave enough to put the whole thing on social media. So you can follow my entire journey on my Instagram, actually. I dabbled in the fitness industry. I got my NASM, and now I am a recruiter and still trying to find my way through this fitness journey.
Yeah, I hear you, and that's a tough, sometimes it's a tough journey to balance, that full-time job, the fitness, making sure you're still staying on track, eating well, so, I'm sure we'll get into it, but,
Yeah.
that's definitely something that it's for me, when I look back now, um oddly enough, it was so much easier to stick to clean eating and doing what I had to do, get into the gym when I was in college. And that's when I started my journey. But post college, having a full time job, man, it's a whole different ball game.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I think for me, like I think I was always like a bigger guy. I was never really like the skinny kid except for when I was like really, really little. I played baseball and football throughout like, high school and middle school and all that. And then really when I got to college, I just started to hang out with my friends more. That was like really the first time that I got to be away from home. Because like I grew up with my parents, grew up in a Pakistani household, so had a little bit more strict parents. I couldn't really like go out and party or do anything like that. So the second I got freedom, man, I took full advantage of it. And next thing I know, like I gain 100 pounds and I just don't even recognize myself. So for me, I didn't even really notice it because for me, like I did not finish college. I, ended up dropping out because I decided, it really wasn't my thing. It wasn't really for me. And, it's nothing against anybody who wants to go get a degree, but I think early on I knew that that wasn't really where my path was going to take me in life. And, I started working. I started in the telephone industry and I started working at T-Mobile and then AT&T. And, I was making such good money at such a young age that I had the naive thought of like, why would I go learn how to make money when I'm already making good money? So, and like when you're working in these like retail environments, you're in a mall, so you're right next to a food court, Chipotle, Taco Bell, like I mean, you name it, it's all easily accessible. So I literally was like eating my way up 100 pounds, but I really never even noticed it. And it's crazy how you look yourself in the mirror and it just kind of happens and you don't really even notice. So
I think that's a huge key, I think that you don't notice that this is happening and sometimes the people around you, they don't wanna say anything, they don't know what to say, they don't know how to approach it, and it just kinda it makes it tough, but the other
yeah.
thing that I wanted to ask you about there, because it's something that I experienced, especially in high school, and playing sports, like, did you have, a core group of friends that you were hanging out with constantly, that they didn't care? Like, Amir was just Amir, and that's who he was,
Yeah.
and, like, they just saw Amir. They didn't see anything else. They didn't see the weight. They didn't see any of this.
Yeah, I think that I definitely had a pretty good core group of friends, and I mean, we like how we. Yeah, you're right. I mean, like it was one of those things where Amir is just going to be Amir, right? And I think everybody just kind of got accustomed to me holding a Mountain Dew Code Red everywhere I went. I was a big, big soda fiend, and that was, I think, the hardest thing for me to give up. But no one ever really looked at me as like the chubby guy or the big guy. And I mean, you kind of eventually know what you are or what your role is in every group, right? So I'm the funny fat guy of the group, so I have to have personality because I really don't have much else, right? But like the good thing was that yeah, I did have those friends, and a couple of those friends happen to be heavier set guys as well. So and we kind of cling to those who we find similarities or those who we find familiar. So I typically find those people who are also foodies or those people who also are like, hey, it's 12 a.m. Let's go to Taco Bell or let's go to Waho or something like that. So I definitely never was hearing it from my friends. And even when it did start to get bad, you had mentioned that, sometimes they don't want to bring it up. Well, I think that they were bringing it up and I just wasn't ready to hear it.
Mhm.
So eventually they just kind of gave up. Right. And not gave up in the sense that like they did not care to tell me anymore. It's just you kind of realize that until somebody's ready for something, they're not really going to be open to it. Like if the problem was that I never saw that it was a problem and therefore like it was never really something that I thought needed fixing. So until I really thought it was a problem and I really internalized like shit, I should really do something about this, that's when everything changed.
And I wanna get to that. Like, I wanna get to that point where you came to that realization, but before we get to that point,
Yeah.
another thing that I wanted to ask you is, when you were, in that high school and college range, I'm assuming that you even if you were, healthy or sick or whatever, you had to go to the doctor. Um, was this anything that your doctor ever brought up to you, and how did they approach it, or how did they word it?
Man, so I'll actually tell you a kind of funny story from a summer camp. So I did a summer camp, for my community, and you typically stay in Pennsylvania for about a month. And at this time, I was definitely well over 300 pounds. Heavy set guy, and I go there, and I tend to not always have the most agreeable stomach at times. And, I definitely was just having a lot of stomach issues. But the people that work there are actually like volunteers. So the lady who volunteered to be the nurse, we called her the nurse auntie. I went to her sick and just like, I was sweating, had cold sweats, like, vomiting, this and that. I go to the nurse, and I mean, she takes one look at me and she's like, "Yeah, you definitely have diabetes." And just like on the spot, without taking any sort of blood sugar, any sort of insulin test, was just like, "Yeah, it's definitely diabetes." And I mean, like, that's more or less the attitude anytime I went to a doctor. The doctor would just be so shocked that I was as healthy as I was. And not in the sense that like I was obviously morbidly obese, but the fact that I was still playing sports and the fact that I was still active for my size, was kind of mind boggling. And I mean, they definitely, if anybody was constantly telling me that I needed change, it was definitely doctors. I mean, literally the last checkup that I can remember, because after I had that summer camp, that lady actually knows my mom really well. And so when we got back, that lady told my mom, she's like, he is so high risk diabetes, it's not even funny. So my mom made me get a diabetes test. I had to get my cholesterol checked, my like blood test, like all that stuff done. And I mean, the doctor just sat down with me and had like a really just looked me in my eye and said, if you don't change, you're gonna eat yourself to death. I hate to be that blunt, but that's just the fact. And I don't know how to make it any more clear to you. So,
But when they had that conversation with you and they told you you're gonna eat yourself to death, you need to make a change, did they offer you any advice?
I wouldn't say advice. I mean, they definitely told me that, like, it was just very generic, vague advice. Like, you should consider, like, just being more active. You should walk for 30 minutes a day, or you should watch your diet. Like, there was no, hey, you should calorie count, or you should try a push day, pull day routine. Like, it was just very basic, generic, and hey, we can recommend you to somebody, but nothing beyond that.
Well, see, that's more than what I had gotten in the past. So, like, when
Mhm,
if I went to the doctor, and even if I was going to the doctor, like, because I was sick, um,
mhm.
it would always be like a, "Hey, have you ever been concerned about your weight or anything?" Something along those lines.
Yeah.
I would say, "No, not really," and then that would be it. Like, they would just let the
Yeah.
conversation go. And I mean, I never had that hard conversation of like, "Yo, if you don't get it together, like, this is not gonna end well." Um,
Mhm.
but even when they would bring it up, if even if I push back a little bit, I'm like, "Nah, it's never been a concern." Like, they just let it
Yeah.
go. And now to me now, like, that just doesn't make sense. You know? Like,
Yeah.
even if they point you in the right direction, like, "Hey, have you ever thought about, like, getting a nutritionist? Or have you ever thought about, trying this or doing that? Or, like,
Yeah.
do you have a gym membership? Can we point you in the right direction? I
Yeah.
know this great gym." Like, even just, like, small little things, but it seems like the conversation that you had was, like, definitely better than the conversations that I had had.
Yeah, I think so, but I think honestly there was the fact that they were kind of like a family friend who was also like our doctor, and they had known me since such a young age. So that rapport was already built, right? Like, I feel like if you just randomly walked into my doctor and you're meeting Ian for the first time, I don't know that he would necessarily be as blunt. But I could honestly put that blame on the doctors, or I could wish that they would do more necessarily, but I honestly think that even if they would have offered me advice at that time, man, like it would have fallen on deaf ears. Like I just was not ready to change. I wasn't ready to hear it, so as much as I would have loved it, I don't know that it would have helped.
Oh, and guess what? I'm with you on that 100% as well, because I was literally just talking to someone today about this. Like, and it wasn't even about weight loss, but it was just about making a significant change, like weight loss. And I said to them, this person that we're talking about, FYI, it didn't work the first time that they tried because they weren't ready. They went there because they were told that they had to go there. They had resentment. They didn't feel like this was a place where they needed to be. They just went through the motions to get the okay and say, you know what, you're good, you can go now. And they're still in denial, right? So
Yeah.
until you're ready to make that change, it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's not, because you're not invested in it. And if it's not something that you're invested in, you just don't give a shit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's only so much motivation one can have for something that you don't really give a fuck about.
Mhm.
Like you can care about it because your parents care about it so much or your significant other cares about it so much. But there's a certain level of like when it gets to the nitty gritty and you really, really just don't feel like doing it, I think that that's the thing. People think that like gym rats are just the most motivated people alive. But like, there's this quote, right? That it says, "When you can't be motivated, be disciplined." Right? And like, I'm not very motivated, and I'm pretty sure that you're not, also, right? Like, there's so many days where you probably wake up and you're like, "Man, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, why do I want to go lift a bunch of weights, or why do I want to eat like a rabbit, or whatever the case may be?" So at that point, that's when you have to be disciplined. But going back to the point you were making about the timing, I mean, that's literally the story of my journey. You said, it didn't work out for this guy the first time. I mean, that's literally me. I had my biggest success literally came right after my biggest and most humiliating failure. So,
Yeah, and I'm gonna let you tell that story right now. I just wanted to say, one more thing about that, and I agree with you 100% on that. Like, people are like, "Oh, you're so motivated to go out and ride for 50 miles or 30 miles, or go out and run 6 miles or swim, whatever it is," and it's like, I'll be honest with you, like, I'm not really that motivated sometimes. Like, there are
yeah,
days where sometimes I just have no interest, like I have
right.
no interest in doing anything. Like I want to sit on the couch just like everybody else some days. But like
Yeah,
you were saying, you have to have that discipline. Like the discipline
right.
is where it comes from. But I'm really interested to hear this story because I was in the same boat as you. Like I had attempted to start getting healthy probably at least one or two times before I really made the decision to start getting healthy. So tell us first about this failure and what led up to this failure, and then how that kind of transitioned into your final start for this weight loss journey.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I was not necessarily the skinniest, but not necessarily like the biggest guy. I just kind of remember when it came to high school, like I was not getting girls or anything like that. And everybody kind of has that guy that they want to be or that body they want to have. And I mean, like, this goes all the way back to I remember on my 18th birthday, I asked my dad if we could look up the health effects for like hydroxycut because I just wanted to lose weight so bad, but like I just genuinely didn't know how to do it, right? And from high school, then I go to college, start partying, start eating late, you know, I start playing sports less, I start working more. And all of a sudden, I go from 215, 250, 275, 300, 315, 330, right? And um, again, I didn't really look at myself and have that, I guess, glass shattering or eureka moment that I really need to do something about this. And that's not to say that people along the way didn't try to open my eyes to it, or people didn't try to have heart to hearts, or no one tried to show me the right way, because they did. But again, like it was just falling on deaf ears. So I remember it was 2017. My cousin was getting married, and I was so hype about these wedding pictures because we got these really nice suits and this and that, and the wedding pictures come back, and I'm horrified. Like I literally could not recognize the dude in these pictures. I mean, like it was really sickening. Like I remember just almost wanting to cry, and that was kind of a eureka moment for me. But, my parents afterwards were like, Amir, no one's going to want to marry you if you look like this. And then even my friends are like, yo, like maybe you should do something about this. And I think really at that time, right, like when you are that big, self-love is not really something that you have. And I give so much kudos to people who have positive body image that are bigger, because I feel like that's so hard to do. But I feel like every big guy has like a wall, and he has this like facade of confidence, or he has to have a sense of humor, because you have to have something, right? If you don't have anything else. So for me, I knew that it was time to change, but was it for me? It wasn't for me at this point. At this point, I was like, you know what? I will do this because I do want to find love and I do want to find a significant other. And so I get on this weight loss journey. I lose 40 pounds. And at this time, I'm working for AT&T doing sales. And I had applied for shits and giggles to a store in Chicago. And I mean, it's like a top store, like not that many people get to go. It's usually by invite only. And I'm like, there's no way I get it, right? And I happened to get the job. And so I moved from Atlanta to Chicago. And this is, again, first time away from my family. I didn't have to live at home. So I was completely on my own this time. And I was super excited about that. And I moved to Chicago. And it was like, you forget to pack things. And it's like, I forgot to pack my gym regimen. Like, I forgot to bring my motivation with me, my good eating habits. Like, I just left it all back at home in Atlanta. And my favorite food is pizza. So moving to Chicago was really just a terrible idea to begin with. So, because then you get to Chicago and you can't just have one, right? You got to have Giordano's, you got to have Pizzeria Uno, you got to have Lou Malnati's, you got to have deep dish, you have Chicago style South Side. So there's like all these different types of pizzas. And the thing is that like the way my diet had worked before Chicago was I was so strict and so stringent that I like always said no. So when you break that routine and you break that streak of saying no, it's really hard to go back to saying no again. And I lived in Chicago only for 8 months, and I think I gained 60 pounds while I was there. So I was even heavier than when I came back. And, like I came back to Atlanta because I got a promotion through work. And honestly, like Chicago, like I was in a very unhealthy relationship that really wasn't helping the situation either. So I just really wanted to go back home and just kind of find my way and just kind of figure this thing out. And so I come back to Atlanta and, feeling like a failure, like, man, I went to Chicago and like I gained all this weight and I like did all this stuff. And like, what was the point? So at this point, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to accept that I'm fat. Like, I'm fat. It's just who I am, it's who I'll always be. Fuck it. That was literally the attitude. And, so I continued the bad eating habits. I'm like, man, I forgot to eat this food, this food, this food, this food. And I just went on like a whole food tour. And in December, I'm in this friend circle, fantasy football group, and we rag on each other. That's what guys do, right? Like, boys will be boys, they say. And we get each other gag gifts every single year. And so this year for the gag gift, I got a weight scale. And normally you would be like, okay, like I'm pretty self aware that I'm fat, right? Like I just had this whole epiphany, I'm fat, right? So you wouldn't think that it would rock me to my core, but damn it, for some reason it did. And this stupid scale only went to 280, and I'm sitting here at 330. So I have to lose 50 pounds before this thing just doesn't even say error, right? And like, I don't know why this moment was like such a disheartening moment, but just seeing like 14 of my closest friends like laugh at me just really like was that glass shattering eureka moment that holy shit, my life is a joke. I am a joke at this point. Like the weight scale is one thing entirely, but the fact that these people like feel comfortable talking and feeling this way about me to my face is a really, really bad thing. And I can't lie, like it could have gone one of two ways, because it got really dark for me at one point, right? Like I was like, man, you know what? Like, I don't know if I can come back from this. And that's really weak thinking, but it was honestly like part of what was going through my mind. And the same friend who actually tagged me in the post that linked me to you, EJ, my very best friend since we were really, really young, he really looked me in my eye and he's like, "What are you going to do about it, man? Like, if you are really this mad and this upsets you this much and you're crying over this, if you really don't want them to talk about this, man up and give them something else to talk about." And I don't know why those words just resonated and lit a fire under my ass so hard, but man, I never forgot about that. And from that point on, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna figure this shit out. Like, I don't care if it takes 6 years, 6 months, like whatever it takes, I'm gonna figure it out. And I mean, I think I spent the next 2 weeks like MIA and hiding just on YouTube, watching every 100 plus pound transformation you can think of. And I literally would make graphs or like Venn diagrams of like, okay, in this column, this guy said calorie counting is essential. In this column, this guy said do a lot of cardio. This guy said do strength training. This guy said this. And I found all the common denominators of people who found success. And I said, okay, well, these people all agree on these few things: diet, exercise, and consistency and patience. Right. And so from that point on, I was like, not only am I going to do this, but I'm going to make them watch me do it. And I decided I was going to put the whole thing on Instagram. And I was going to post a picture of LA Fitness or whatever stupid gym that I went to that day. And they were going to have to watch me prove them wrong because I was tired of being the joke. And from that day on, I've just kept the chip on my shoulder and it's just kept me going.
And what year was this?
So the weight scale year was 2017,
Okay.
Christmas 2017.
Okay. And so then you started in like that January, February of 2018?
Yeah, January 2018 is when I will consider my official start for my weight loss journey.
And did you go into this with the mindset of it being a, quote unquote New Year's resolution, or did it just happen to fall around that time because of when you got the weight scale?
It happened to be, just because it was right around that time, and that's why I did the next 2 weeks. I was like, I'm gonna spend the last part because we didn't do it exactly on Christmas. I think we did it like December 12th or something like that. So I had a couple of weeks left in the year. I was like, I'm gonna finish out this year doing as much research as I possibly can, and no excuses. Starting January 1st. So yeah, in a way, you could say it was a New Year's resolution, but I knew that it was gonna take a lot more than just 1 year to fix what I had to fix. So.
And out of those guys in the group that gave you the scale as the
Mhm,
the joke, but maybe not really a joke type of thing,
mhm.
were any of those guys into fitness? And could you like lean on them and ask them for any advice or anything?
I mean, yeah, I play basketball with a lot of those guys, so I would say that that's more their realm of fitness. There's definitely a couple of guys in there that lift heavy, but I honestly at that point didn't even want to go to them. It became one of those things where like I guess I became vengeful. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it completely by myself. So I didn't ask any of them for help. I mean, I definitely asked people for help. Like there's a guy Nazim at Day to Day Workouts on Instagram, cheap plug. He built a whole workout routine for me, and he actually used to be a student of mine when I was teaching religious classes. And he went from being like the skinniest kid you've ever seen in your entire life. Like you could blow him like a birthday candle, and he could have blown halfway across the room. Like that's how skinny he was. And now he looks like he's Hercules. Like I kid you not. And I was so inspired, even though he kind of did the reverse of what I was looking to do, I was like, he at least knows something about transforming his body. So that was one guy who I really, really leaned on heavily. So, and there were some people that I knew who had, gone through weight loss journeys themselves. They didn't necessarily do it on like a grandiose scale that I did necessarily, but they had their own success. And I was definitely hounding anybody that I possibly could who I could get a response out of that, like, hey, what did you do? Hey, what did you do? Hey, I'm trying this. What do you think? Or, I was that sponge that I wanted to learn every little piece of information that I possibly could. So,
I've said it like 10,000 times on the podcast before because I've had, quite a few people who've had a weight loss journey, along with some of the other amazing stories that have been on. But I've said, 1,000 different times, I did the same exact thing. Now, I started my journey, but like a little bit before you. And So the Instagram was around, but it wasn't huge. I definitely wasn't like thinking like, oh, I could follow people on here who, went through weight loss. Like it just wasn't something that really crossed my mind at first. Um,
Mhm.
but I found myself on bodybuilding.com because
Mhm.
back in the day, bodybuilding.com, you didn't have to have an account. It was free. And you could
Yeah.
download workout like a whole workout plan with diet, nutrition, supplements, everything. You could download the whole thing and follow it along. And the guy that I latched onto is Chris Gethin. I don't know if you follow Chris Gethin on Instagram,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he was one of the like bodybuilding.com trainers. And I remember there was like a full, I want to say it was like an 8-week transformation. He did a video for every single day, like tons and tons of content, and it was all free. And I just found myself glued to bodybuilding.com. And then I also started, an Instagram to document my journey. And I just started like going through hashtags and finding people like when I started counting macros instead of counting calories, I would go through and find people who were counting macros who were also losing weight and just say like, "Hey, out of your calories, like what percentage of them are from carbs versus what percentage of them, come from fats and proteins?" And like just being a sponge and taking in any sort of information that I could.
Yeah, man. And see, that's the thing, right? Like they say, when you feel like you know everything, that's when you truly know nothing at all. And the thing about fitness too is like it's a never-ending journey, right? Whether you're cutting or you're bulking or whatever the case may be, your body is ever changing. Nobody's body ever stays the same forever and ever. And the people that I really relied on, I grew up a big Kobe fan, rest in peace. Like his work ethic and his mentality were always like something that I implemented. And I remember when I like started going, YouTube was probably the main platform for me just because like I'm a visual learner and I like to, kind of listen along and watch along. So I'd watch a lot of YouTube videos of Beast to Beast. I mean, Danny Gets Fit, you name them. But then I remember I started watching these like really hardcore workout motivational Denny Fletcher type, CT Fletcher type videos, and I came across this one, and it completely changed my training regimen. And I used to work out after working retail. You work like 10, 11 hours, and then the last thing you want to do is go spend an hour, hour and a half in the gym. And I watched the video, and it was all about The Rock and Kobe, and about how much time they got back by waking up earlier than everybody else, right? And they said, like Kobe would be in the gym at 4:30 in the morning, or The Rock would be in the gym at 4:30 in the morning, and the average person will wake up, around 6:37. So that's like a good 2 to 2.5 hours a day that you have as an advantage over everybody else. And I became that person. Like it was the hardest thing to kind of implement as part of my regimen, waking up at 5 in the morning, but it completely changed everything for me. I mean, like the adrenaline high would get me through the rest of the day. My productivity at work went through the roof. I mean, my confidence was starting to skyrocket. I mean, it completely changed my entire regimen. So for whoever's listening, if you're thinking about it, you should definitely try it. So
Well, I was gonna mention, I'll still mention it anyway. I I I am the complete opposite of you. I am not a morning person.
oh no,
I
man.
hate getting up in the morning, and
Yeah,
like it is a struggle for me to get up in the
yeah.
morning. And it's so funny because I do it, like I know the benefits of getting up in the morning, but if I don't absolutely have to, for
Yeah.
me training in the evenings is just like that cap on my day, right? So
Mhm.
some people will say like, "Oh, I train in the morning," and then it's amazing because I don't have to do anything else for the day, right? Like, okay, yes, I have to go to work, but like I don't have this like looming feeling like, oh shit, I still have that workout to do. And they just feel like if they work out in the morning, like the rest of the day is a cakewalk. They could literally take on anything that comes their way. I do feel that, but I also feel like when I work out in the evening, it just you can literally just feel that stress from the day melting off of you, you know? So I kind
Yeah.
of like equate it to like that person who comes home and has a beer or a glass of wine or something after, a long day at work. Well, like getting on the bike for me and doing intervals until I feel like I'm going to pass out is that that beer or that glass of wine for me, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday evening after a day at work that's just been like absolutely insane.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that you need, right? And it's so crazy how, you and I can have completely different methodologies, but like really be doing the same thing, right? Like I'm a morning person, you're a night owl, and I feel like that's the beauty of fitness in and of itself, right? Like they say, literally, no two bodies are the same. Like no body is the same.
Mhm.
Like something that works for you could not work for me, and like that's a frustrating part of it too, right? Like you see these people who you're like, man, it looks like they can eat pizza all day every day and that works for them, but it can't work for you. Like I look at pizza and I gain 2 pounds automatically. So but like to each their own, right? So if that's what gets you through your day, right? Like for me, it's literally the exact opposite. Like my girlfriend, my friends, everybody knows if I have not worked out that day, like I am just a complete grouch. Like just forget it for the rest of the day. My boss even will be like, "Have you worked out today? Okay, yeah, go take your lunch break and go get a lift. Come back." So
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth there on that one because it's true. Everybody's different, and the biggest thing that I always tell people is you gotta find what works for you, because what
right.
worked for me, it may work for you, it may not, right? But you gotta try it, taste it, see how it feels, and if it's not working, it's not working. You got to move on to something else.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me, man. When I was posting all these stories on Instagram, like I would post food or whatever I'm eating, and people are like, "Hey, what's the best workout routine for me?" or "What's the best diet for me?" And I'm like, "I don't know, the one that you can stick to." Like, I don't know anything about you or your goals or what works for you, right? Like, people just expect us to have like this cookie cutter advice just readily available to be like, here you go. I automatically know which body that you want. You clearly want to look like Brad Pitt from Fight Club. So here you go. Here's that generic cookie cutter plan. Have at it. Right. But it just doesn't work that way, as I'm sure you agree.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. But you were talking about posting stuff on Instagram there, and posting food and posting some things on there. And I'm sure you feel the same way as I do, that generally the overwhelming sense is that you have a pretty positive interaction with most people on Instagram. But
Mhm.
when you started your Instagram and you were posting things, and you're posting these things to kind of stick it to people, like, look, this is what I'm doing. You wanted to give me shit for this, but this is where I am. This is what I'm doing. Instead of people seeing it as motivating, or you're putting your story out there, you were catching flack for it, and people were actually giving you shit. Oh, you're posting too much. You're doing this. You're doing
Yeah.
that. Like, so what was that all about?
Man, so that's kind of when the plot thickens, right? So they say. And for me, I really was doing it to stick it to my friends at first, and then it became like, okay, after a while, I was like, maybe I shouldn't be such a petty person. Maybe I should let that go. And I'm like, you know what? I'll do it as an accountability thing, right? Because after a while, it became an expectation that like Amir every day at this time is pretty much going to post a picture of something gym related, right? And it became a bat signal for people. Um, but then like you start to post so much stuff, and like let's say for example I would do a deadlift, right? Like I would get 3 people being like, "Bro, your form is so off," or "Bro, this," like, "Bro," like, and it becomes like one of those things where it's like, I'm out here trying to like do something positive for people. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I've been very fortunate that I have been able to do something positive for people. But it came to a point where like I would post a picture of some unhealthy food on my cheat day or my cheat meal, and it would literally say cheat day or cheat meal. And I would get messages from people being like, "Oh, did you give up your diet? Oh, are you not dieting anymore? Oh, is this how you're eating now?" And like it's so judgmental and so like the opposite of what I'm trying to do. Because for me, like after the accountability thing, like one story I didn't really get into with you is that when I like did start going to the gym, I like wanted a personal trainer, but I couldn't really afford one. And I remember the LA Fitness guy was like, "Man, if you don't work with me, like you're gonna stay fat forever." And that just lit a whole other different like Mamba mentality fire under my ass. And like for me, it really just became one of those things where like I had to prove people wrong, right? And then it became one of those things where okay, there's really not a lot of people who are really big or used to be really big, especially in the fitness industry, that can say, like, all I really wanted was somebody to be like, look, I used to look like you. Now I look like what you want to look like. This is what I did. Because that's just the basics of it, right? Like there's no research behind that. It's just give me the cut out all the fat and just give me the truth. Right. And then I kind of figure out, hey, maybe I can be that for people. Right. And I actually went into the fitness industry for that reason. And I worked at Lifetime Fitness for a good period there. And I really got to do some good things there. But eventually it was like fitness just started to take over my entire life. Right. Like imagine that the gym, as you say, right, like you would get through the day and then working out is your beer.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine you're sitting in a bar the whole day. And then your friends are like, do you want to go grab a beer at the same bar that you've been at the entire day? Right. And you're like, the last fucking place I want to be is here. Right. So then it like started to mess with my whole fitness journey. Right. And then, it became a thing where like it was like an identity crisis where I'm losing weight and I'm seeing success. By this time I've lost like 100 pounds now that I'm in the fitness industry. I'm at my leanest, I'm getting to be as muscular as I've ever been before. So like this is really a whole new person when I look in the mirror, right? So never really had confidence, never really believed in myself before, wasn't really like the ladies man at all. So I'm literally trying to figure out who I am as a whole. And I didn't really get a lot of time to figure myself out, right? So who people saw before, the funny fat guy, transitioned into this fitness Instagram type dude. And so then everybody like now they're no longer looking for Aamir. Now everybody's looking for Captain America. So it's like at every point now everybody's looking for what am I going to do next? Like, okay, great, you lost 100 pounds. When's 110 coming? Or, oh, okay, when's 120 coming? When's 130 coming? Or then like when I do finally get that time to sit in the gym, oh, now I have to worry about getting content because there's people out there who are relying on me for motivation, right? Because I'm really lucky and humbled that they found my story inspiring in some way, shape, or form, right? So that just became a whole new level of pressure. And I honestly didn't really know what I was signing myself up for. I was literally just like, I'm going to stick it to my friends. I'm going to put this all on social media. I'm going to be hot by the end of this. Life is going to be great. And then, I just really opened up myself to a whole can of like criticism, people really just kind of talking behind my back about like, oh man, he posts too much, or I really wish he wouldn't post so many before and afters. And, I'm really that type of person that like, I can take it. Just tell me, and so like just finding out from other sources and like it's people who are like a lot closer to you than you wish that they were. And yeah, I mean, like that was the whole part of the journey that was the biggest struggle that I really wasn't anticipating because it's already hard enough trying to lose weight and trying to like, find yourself and love yourself. And on top of that, now I have to worry about becoming a public figure-esque person who now has just celebrity type drama, even though I'm nowhere close to that. So,
So when we talk about your journey and we talk about some of the things that you did and some of the changes that you made,
mhm.
I would love to know that if your journey was kind of similar to mine in the sense that you made small incremental changes, right? So like you cut one thing out at a time, or you said, okay, like, fast food, done. Not I'm not having
Yeah.
fast food, and this was well before the idea of like cheat meals, because when you first start, you are nose to the ground, like just grinding and getting it done. There is no time for a cheat day because you're so focused on not screwing something up, right? But was there anything, any small steps that you made in the beginning that really helped to kind of build a foundation for you that to keep this, just to help it stick and stay?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was first becoming accountable, right? And what I mean by that is like actually getting on a weight scale, finding out really like how much damage had been done, what is my true weight, going into the gym, getting my body fat percentage measured. Then I went and took all my before pictures, right? And then one thing I did was I took that picture that really changed everything for me and the one that really horrified me for my cousin's wedding, I made it my iPhone lock screen. So every time I picked up my phone, I had to look at this picture of myself that I absolutely hate. And I was literally just trying to, like, I don't know if you watched The Last Dance, how Michael Jordan would psych himself up, right? Like for me, that was that. Like it was just constantly trying to piss myself off or constantly trying to work myself up, to really getting motivated at all times. But really, the biggest thing for me, man, was downloading my Fitness Pal, because growing up in a Pakistani household, we're growing up on like curry, bread, and rice, right? Like doing a keto diet in a Pakistani family is like literally like you're turning your back on our entire culture. so like it just can't happen. So I downloaded my Fitness Pal, and listened to what it gave me as far as calorie recommendations, and really just tried to start to get into a habit of being a regimented and routine person because I wasn't that before. When I dropped out of school, like really my only routine was just I got to work from 9 to however long, right? So building that routine of like, okay, I'm going to go in my calendar, and Monday is going to be chest day, Tuesday is going to be arm day, Wednesday is going to be leg day, Thursday is going to be rest day, and literally like put it down on my calendar. Downloaded my Fitness Pal, started getting in the habit of tracking every little thing. And then really it's just like the small changes are just the common sense stuff, right? Like you can really just eyeball and look at something and just kind of figure out like, hey, that's probably not conducive to what I'm trying to do. Like if I'm over here trying to drop mad weight, maybe I should stay away from McDonald's,
Hmm.
right? Like so you kind of try to do the common sense things that are absolutely not right, because I knew that I was going to consistently and constantly educate myself along the way, but in the meantime just trying to stay out of my own way. And that's been a big problem for me, I'll admit, my entire life. Is I don't know about you, but I definitely have a tendency to be my own worst enemy at times. And even to this day, like I'm scared of myself because I can go through like a dozen cookies like nobody's business.
Hmm.
Like you see the Rock's cheat days, like I could have those little cheat days any given day of the week. And so that like kind of scares me, right? So whenever I start to go away from the like little things like tracking and putting the stuff on my calendar or having the fattest picture of myself on my lock screen, it's whenever I start to go away from that and I become less engaged from the routine that I've built, that's when it starts to get dangerous. And then all of a sudden I'm like, it's 2 a.m. and I'm like, why am I at Taco Bell getting a Taco 12 pack for just myself? But it happens, right? So
Now, is that still your lock screen to this day?
not to this day. Now it is
Okay.
a picture of me and my girlfriend.
Okay. All right.
I've moved on to greener pastures
Yeah,
now.
I mean, that's deep though. That's deep. And the other thing I wanted to recognize you for and then let you know that I thought when as soon as you said this, I mean, I didn't say it aloud, but I thought it in my head. Um, Being at the size, the weight, and just where you were mentally and physically, to go in and get your body fat percentage done at a gym like that is, I think that's something that's very brave, and it's something that needs to be recognized because that's a big step, right? Like going in front of a stranger like that for somebody um, that is in that position, I think it is. It's big. I mean, there's really nothing more to say about that. So like I said, I think it's very brave. I think it's very admirable that's a decision that you made prior to even starting this journey.
Yeah, I think I knew that that had to be my first step. I'll be honest with you, Ian, like I remember going into different stores, and you always know where the stores are or the mirrors are in clothing stores, right? You're very cognizant of where they're going to be. They're pretty like obvious about where they're going to be. I knew where they were, and I would see them in the corner of my eye, and I'd be like, you know what? I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. I'm just not even going to look right now. Like that's how it became. I literally wouldn't look myself in the mirror. Just acknowledging myself was such a hard thing for me to do. Like literally up until I would say maybe about a year ago. I just didn't have a lot of self love. Like I just didn't. I came, um, you know, just from always being the fat friend, right? Like you don't really realize when you become this different person, right? And it's something that I like really, really struggled with, honestly, my entire life. So
Well, how have you worked on that? What have you done to help build that self-esteem, that self-worth back up from where it was, aside from just the fitness and obviously turning and seeing your accomplishments, that's going to give you a big boost there. But have you done any sort of other work on that?
Yeah, man. I think I definitely had to really take a second to step away from social media. I had to take a second to really kind of like date and learn myself, right? Because here also became a problem was when I did, realize like, oh man, hey, what's up, dude? Like I realized like, okay, maybe I'm like a little cute, right? And I got a little confidence and I got a little like, okay, let me go start talking to some girls, right? Like when it got to that point, then I really again wasn't taking the time to get to know myself, right? Like I was looking for that external validation or that external love. And that's what social media was for me for a while too, right? Like all these positive messages or all the likes or all the comments, way to go. Like that's all validation. And it really took a long time for me to realize that I thrived off of that external validation. So cutting that off, right? Cutting off that social media and being like, man, I wonder if I can still keep this routine if nobody's watching, right? And then cutting that off and then becoming self-reliant again and really having to change that. And I'll be honest, man, a lot of people, I think that there's a mental health stigma for a lot of people and they don't they don't want to go get professional help. And that's something that I did. I'm not ashamed of it any way, shape, or form. I definitely did some therapy, and it was something that I needed, right? And people just think that like people who are these disciplined people or who are these motivated people or these gym people, like they are these infallible, like these like invincible people. They're warriors, and that's what it became, right? Like I went from being the sensitive, funny guy to like, oh, like he's muscular gym guy, so like he's tough, he can take it, right? So like it just became this whole other stereotype or stigma that like, oh, you're tough, like you shouldn't have emotions or you shouldn't feel this way, you should just be able to handle everything on your own, right? And that just kind of brings all of its stigmas with it, and it just became difficult, right? Like filtering through who I am and all that. Like it's not something that somebody can just do looking themselves in the mirror. And if you can, then more power to you. But I feel like, when you have a cold, you're going to go see the doctor, right? Or when you scrape your knee or you twist your ankle, you're going to go see the doctor. So it's literally the same process. And especially coming from a South Asian culture, like in our culture, they just say like mental health, like it's all in your mind. It's like, yeah, duh, that's the point. That's why I need to go get it checked. So, yeah, I mean, that was something that I had to do, but also really like, what do I love? What makes me happy? Like giving myself positive affirmations and really just like learning to cut off external sources of validation and really figure out, why am I doing this? Why am I waking up every single morning? Why am I telling myself, no, don't eat these cookies? Why am I being disciplined? Right. And really then you start to look at yourself and you look at the man in the mirror and then you realize like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't lose this weight because I want to love myself. Maybe I should go ahead and love myself now and do these positive things to benefit myself now and benefit myself later. And people look at like working out or eating right as like this punishment type of thing, but it's not that. It should be a privilege, right? Like fitness is literally just meant to be somewhere where you can go like have your beer at the end of the day, right? Like it should be a stress relief. It should be something you look forward to, not something that you're just absolutely just despising. And when it becomes that for people, that's when people tend to quit, right? Like you don't eat the foods that you enjoy, so you're like, nope, not going to eat that. Or you're doing these workouts that are just destroying your legs for a week and a half, so you just don't go back. So yeah, man, I mean all that stuff just kind of gets crazy and it's hard to wrap your head around it all. So
One of the things that you did, we kind of touched on it, but it's something that I noticed myself, and I just wanted to know if it was something that you experienced as well. Um, Post weight loss, and I'm talking like maybe it even would have started around like that 100 pounds lost, even maybe 90 pounds, 70 pounds, somewhere in there. You had joked about not being able to even get a girl's attention or get a girl to look at you or anything like that. But post weight loss, just walking through the grocery store, the mall, any local shop, whatever the case may be, after the weight loss, did you notice that that was different? And you would walk past a girl and she'd maybe kind of give you like a half smile, and you're like, wait a minute, like
Yeah,
like that girl just not only did she just look at me, but I think she just smiled at me, right? And like the first time it
yeah.
happened, you're like, nah, that didn't happen. And then you walk a little bit further, and then it might happen again. It might happen again. Like, did you start to notice that?
Man, I will tell you, I remember the very first time that I recognized that a girl found me attractive. Like, I literally was having a conversation with a girl, and she just looked at me completely differently than any girl had ever looked at me at this point. And I go for some really lame dad jokes at times. I'm not even gonna lie. I have that humor. I'm a total Phil Dunphy from Modern Family, but like I'll go for it. I don't give a damn. Like who cares, right? And I knew that it was a joke that was definitely not that funny. And I mean, she just like busts out laughing, does the whole like I'm gonna touch your arm subtly, like totally not noticing that I'm totally flirting with you. And in my head, I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? What is this? I am not this funny. Like, what is happening right now? And then it happened again a few days later at a bar. And I'm like, okay, that's not a coincidence. Absolutely not. Like, I am not on a roll right now. Like, I'm not in one of my Dave Chappelle funny vibes. Like, this is not happening. Like, what is happening? And it even got to the point that, I would go like with my friends to Piedmont Park here in Atlanta, go throw around a football, and my friend would be like, "Yo, have you noticed that she's checking you out?" And I'm like, "What? Who? What? Me?" And because a lot of the times, man, I'm not even gonna lie. Like when I would think, or you hear the voice in your head, or you like when you're the narrator in your own mind, it was still the other guy. And by the other guy, I mean the guy that I was used to seeing for the first 28 years of my life, right? So like in my mind, it's not even registering that like, oh yeah, I look like what I look like, right? And I feel like I will say this, right? Like the criticism of posting too much, there was a reason behind that, and it was that like I had so many old fat pictures that I just wanted to post as many new skinny pictures to erase the other guy, right? Like I just, hey, don't look at this. Look at this, right? Like this is what I want you to look at, right? Because that's what I was told when the weight scale was given. If you don't want them to remember this, give them something else to talk about. So, and it definitely helped my dating life. It didn't hurt losing 130 pounds. It definitely made life a lot easier. But really, I feel like, man, like it all transitioned when I really started to become more self confident,
Mhm.
and I really took that time to like figure out who I am and figure out what I'm really all about. Because up until that point, like I would kind of just match whoever it was that I was dating, right? Because I like these were girls that were out of my league before, like a total Mike Jones. Back then, they didn't want me. Now I'm hot. They all on me situation, and I just didn't know how to handle it. So I was like, hey, all right, whatever, let's go with it. And you start to go with the flow. And then you realize that like some people are not really wanting you for you. They're wanting you for your potential, or they're seeing this great accomplishment, or they're seeing this potential from like, hey, if he did this, then you can do this, or what's his next big move going to be? And, they just kind of like try to attach themselves to that. And you never want to attach yourself to those kind of people either. So it really became hard to like figure out who's really about me and who's not about me. And that affected my dating life too, because then I had just major trust issues, right? I'm like, man, I tried to holler at you a year ago when I was bigger, and you didn't respond, and now all of a sudden your phone number works, like, and that was tough, right? Like, but at the same time, I tried to like have some sort of like empathy that like, okay, would I have found me attractive, or oh maybe it's not their fault, and at that point I tried to like understand where they were coming from at the same time. But really, man, like it was once I started to think I was dope, I think that self-love, it just shined to other people, and I feel like that's when I really really like found true happiness. So
And through all this change, obviously, life changes, jobs change, times change. When you kind of had to change your situation, how did that affect the routine that you were so used to? Because you said, you are a very, very routine focused kind of person.
Mhm.
So when you made this transition from working in some of the cell phone stores where your schedule may have been a little bit more flexible and a little bit more fluid, now you're working as a recruiter, probably spending a pretty good amount of time sitting at a desk, whereas working at AT&T or somewhere, you're on your feet a lot, you're up, you're moving around, you're talking to customers the whole day.
Right.
How did things like that affect your routine, and how are you kind of dealing with some of those changes now?
Yeah, I mean, so the good thing about like when I was at AT&T, I feel like that's when I had the strictest schedule of all. And that's really part of why I had to wake up so early to work out. Just because I would get off sometimes 7, 8 o'clock at night and really just not want to go to the gym that late. And then when I was working at Lifetime, obviously I was at a gym. I had the luxury of if I wanted to go on my lunch break and just go walk upstairs and get a lift in, I could. I could stay before, after, whatever the case may be. So, that was a blessing in and of itself. And then really once I came over to the company that I'm at now as a recruiter, you're right. Like I'm sitting a lot. And then obviously, the global pandemic happens and now all of a sudden I'm sitting a lot and I'm also at home. And that was hard to transition, kind of itself too, right? Like, I don't know about you, but like working out at home is not my vibe and not my jam whatsoever. But I did buy a few dumbbells. I bought some equipment, set something up in the garage, and really just like before I came over to the company that I'm at now, just having that experience from having to build a routine at AT&T, I was like, okay, I need to figure out what my commute is. I need to figure out what my lunch break is. And I need to figure out what my commute is to get home. And once I mapped that out, I was like, okay, I can go to the gym at this time, this time, this time. And really just having that experience of having to do that from AT&T, it was actually a lot easier of a transition. It was just harder once, kind of work from home happened, because obviously I don't have the luxury of going to the gym necessarily. Obviously, it is open here in Georgia now, so I am back in the gym now. But there was like the 3, 4 months where having to find the motivation to work out from home or doing these redundant walks that just okay, same old tree, yeah, same old bush from yesterday. Yeah, this is so exciting. Because they even I'm a big hiking guy, and even all the trails were closed, for obvious reasons. So now those are open back up. So really, I just kind of was like, all right, well, I can't get back to normal. So the best thing that I can do is get as close to normal as possible. And I literally just built out the whole regimen and routine from there. Same thing that I did from before. All right, Monday's gonna go back to being chest day, Tuesday's gonna go back to being arm day, Wednesday's gonna be leg day. And I literally put it on my work calendar. I put it on my personal calendar. Like my boss knows what time I go to the gym every day. Like it's on there on my calendar. So and that's just kind of how you have to be, right? Like they say at one point with fitness, especially, you almost have to kind of become obsessed, right? And you just have to really, really dedicate and make it all about your life, right? Because it's not a race, right? Like you're not going to be doing this for 6, 7 months and then you go back to the way that you used to be and expect to have the body that you have now, right? Like it's something that you have to maintain some sort of semblance of over a longer period of time. So really just kind of building that out, being the visual person that I am, building that into my calendar, that's really helped me out. So
It's funny that you say, because you mentioned earlier about being disciplined, and sometimes, when that motivation runs out, you got to be disciplined. I think that something that takes the most amount of discipline is working out at home, because whether it's
yeah,
in the morning or it's in the evening when you come home from work, to me, it's so much harder to get it done at home sometimes, right? Because there's so many distractions at home. You could come home and you put your bag down and you kick your shoes off, and then your girlfriend or your significant other might need something. You start helping them, and then next thing you know, you're like, oh, there's 30 minutes gone. Now I got to go
yep,
upstairs. I still got to get changed, right? Like, but when you have your gym bag and you walk into the gym, there's nothing else for you to do. There are no distractions. Like, why
right,
you're there.
right,
So I talk to people about that quite a bit because they're like, "Oh, I see you have a treadmill, or I see you have this, this bike trainer that you hook your bike up to. Which one do you have? I've been thinking about this, or I've been thinking about getting a Peloton. I've been thinking about getting this." I'm like, "Listen, I'm not trying to shy you away from it. It's just know that it's not for everyone. Like, working out from home is not for everyone. And think about it this way. Yes, the money that you invest in the Peloton, like, that's a piece of equipment that's now in your home. But guess what? If you don't go to the gym, you can cancel your gym membership. If you have a Peloton, you're going to have to stare at that thing until you post it online, maybe for somebody to sell. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's just one of those things. Like, sometimes it's very, very difficult to convince yourself to work out when you get home, whereas, like I said, when you go to the gym, that's it. Like, it's business time. You know what you're there for.
Yeah, I mean, like, when you do the work from home and you get the workout equipment to put in your house, it's no longer, like you said, you can cancel your gym membership. That's like a renting situation, right? Like, you come in, you're on a contract, maybe month to month, whatever the case may be, use the equipment, you go home, you have no other financial obligations. But all of a sudden, when you start buying, a Peloton or dumbbells or benches, or whatever the case may be, you're right. Until you put that back up on OfferUp or whatever the case may be, you've now committed to that long term. So it's ironic that it was kind of supposed to be a short term solution, right? Like, I don't think that any gym head went into it getting a pull up bar or dumbbells or anything like that, thinking like, yes, this is going to be my long term replacement for the gym. But you kind of figured out a long term solution or a long term way of going about it because now you're committed to that purchase that you just made. So
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, listen, I don't say this to shy people away, but I think when somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, I want to get this because it'll be so much easier for me to have it, at my house. I'll definitely use it." Um, I always like to just give people a warning. Like, listen, it's sometimes it's not as easy as you think. Like, when you get home for the day, just like whether you work out in the morning or you work out in the evening, like, when you get home, sometimes all you wanna do is just be home and be done. So
yeah,
without stopping at the gym, you get home and you're kind of already have that in your head.
I feel like that mentality bleeds into so many other things though. Like, for example, I have an Apple Watch, right? And I get asked so many times anytime it comes up on my story, like, "Oh, what do you think of the Apple Watch? Do you think that it's gonna make me like more fit?" Like, and I think that that's such a trivial question because I'm like, do I think that it's going to like wake you up in the morning and make you work out? No. Like, that's not what it's meant for, right? But people have the tendency to be like, "Oh, like if I take pre-workout, is that gonna give me the energy?" Like, well, it'll give you energy, but it doesn't mean that you're going to use that to go into the gym, right? And so people like look at these things like, oh, I'll get a Peloton or I'll buy a gym membership, right? So when I was at Lifetime, I sold gym memberships, right? And so many people would come in, and those were the easiest ones. They're like, all right, sharks in the water, we got this guy. Like, yeah, I'm going to commit myself to a gym membership, and that's going to make me start coming. I mean, that was like the easiest, and you could tell that that's a lie. Like, at no point do you make a financial commitment and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to start doing it. I feel like the percentage of people who actually like follow through on that has to be so small. I don't know the data, but I would love to see what it would be. But so more often than not, those people who would be like, yeah, let me get a gym membership because now I'm going to start to do it. That would never happen. Or people would be like, yeah, now that I'm monetarily obligated, now I'm going to start coming. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
And it's strange because you see it every year in January, and this is why I asked you about, your New Year's resolution, or was this something that just happened that way? Because there's so many people that show up and at the first of the year, and I I I want to go up to them and say, like, listen, like, just please do me a favor and keep coming back. Like, it's gonna take work, but just keep showing up, right? Like, in
Yeah.
at the end of January, when you don't see the results that you wanted, come back in February. And
Yeah.
when you come back in February and you're not where you thought you would be in February, come back, because it's gonna take some time. But it
Yeah.
goes back to that old adage that, are they coming to the gym on January 1st because they wanna come to the gym on January 1st? Or Are they coming to the gym on January 1st because they feel like it's something that they have to do because it's a New Year's resolution and that's what you do on January 1st? You make a resolution, that this is going to be your year and you're going to get better.
Yeah. And I mean, you're absolutely right about that, right? Like people go in with this sort of obligation that like, oh, now that it's January 1st, now I have to magically become a better person overnight. And it just doesn't work that way, right? I'll tell you, even with my weight loss journey, I didn't really see significant results in the mirror. Even though I was like 50, 60 pounds down, I still pretty much looked like the same person. It wasn't really like until I would say, I don't know, like July, August, when I was maybe 70, 80 pounds down, that I was finally like, wow, I'm actually starting to see results. But like people just kind of get so discouraged because they wanted to happen at the pace that they wanted to happen at, right? And I always try to tell people like you first have to check your efforts before you check your results because they directly correlate with one another. Right. So like people want to put in 50% of the work, but they want to get 100% of the results back. And it's just not how it works, right? And that's just part of the problem is that like people just really need to understand what they're getting themselves into and really just understand that this is a marathon. And that's why I continue to post now. I don't really post as much as I used to. I don't like get in front of the camera or do motivational speeches or anything like that to the extent that I used to, but I still keep it going to a certain extent so that way people know that this is an ever going journey. Like this thing really never stops. It's a constant evolution. And then every now and again, like when I find something insightful, I'll speak on it or something like that. But really, I just kind of remain as that presence that, like, if people feel comfortable and they want to talk to me or they want to say, hey, look, I've gone through this, my fitness journey. What do you think? The thing that I used to hate and the reason I got my NASM was because I used to hate, like, I could only speak out of experience. What if the answer I was giving was wrong? And I just would have felt so guilty if I would have given somebody an answer and they had to go through so many more struggles because of that. And that's really just what I wanted to be, and that's what I hope to be. Is that if somebody does have a question and they don't feel comfortable, because it is pretty intimidating, right? For those people who come into the gym in January, first they have to deal with the gym shyness, right? Like you're in a whole different entire environment than what you're used to. You're kind of thinking that everybody is looking at you when they're really not, right? Like, and you don't notice that until later on. It's when you're bigger, you're like, oh, everybody's looking at me, everybody's looking at my like muffin top hanging out, or everybody's looking at this, or everybody's looking at that. And those are those insecurities that we project from ourselves onto other people, right? And we really don't realize that it's really just all in our head, and it's really just us to begin with. And that's the crazy part about it.
Yeah, people who are actually at the gym to work out and, get the work done, get in, get out, um, they don't give a shit what's going on around them, right? Like, that's why they
Yeah.
have headphones in. That's why they don't really talk to people. They get the work done and they get out because that's what they're there for. They're there to get the work done. Like, those people, they don't give a shit what's going on around them. And, like, those are the people who they know what they're doing, right? Like, and then you have these other people, like these clowns who are like, look, like pointing and laughing or whatever it is that they're doing. Like, what are you there for? You know what I mean? Like, worry about
Yeah.
yourself, do your work. I'll do my work, and then like let's catch up when we're done, and see who's where. Because I feel like the people who are those people who are pointing and laughing, the people that we're so worried about, like, they're not even worth worrying about, and the people who aren't pointing and laughing are the ones that we should be watching and seeing what they're doing because they're the ones who are doing it right, like, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can say that I'm blessed that I have met nothing but like just truly supportive people in the gym. Whether I was big or whether where I'm at now, any sort of advice or any sort of like constructive feedback I've gotten has always just meant so much to me. Because I remember, being that bigger guy, right? And just wishing that somebody would help me. So anytime somebody would see me mess up, like I could have taken it the negative way. But I always kind of took it as, hey, look, this person is going out of their way. They don't have to be nice. They don't have to say this to me. Um, you know, but they are, and they're doing me a favor. And especially, when I was working in the fitness industry and being around so many physical therapists and being around personal trainers, they it's crazy because when you join Lifetime, they have you go through their entire, way of life and their entire system, and they have you do like a health assessment, right? And so with that health assessment, they kind of like see how you move and all that. And when I did my movement test, the guy was like, "You are a catastrophic injury waiting to happen." I'm like, "What do you mean? That's terrible news." And he's like, "Well, just the way that you come down, like you don't put your weight on your heels, you put it on the front, so you're just like a MCL ACL waiting to happen." But feedback like that is helpful, right? Like I play a lot of basketball, I do a lot of things. Last thing that I could afford is my knee blowing out, right? So stuff like that, like I've just always had very, very supportive, very humble, and just like it was just such a blessing that like when I was in the fitness industry, that people were not exploiting me or people were not like trying to use me for, like use my story to like benefit them in any way, shape, or form, because they really could have, right? Like anybody could have tried to say, "Hey, could you say that you worked with me and I'm the reason you lost all this weight?" And I did have some offers like that come later on down the road. But overall, it's just been nothing but supportive and just really overall kind people.
Yeah, I think the gym kind of industry and the gym mentality, and like I said, the people who go to the gym and spend a lot of time there, um, i- they are a very helpful bunch, right? And
Yeah,
it feels really good, especially as someone who's going through a weight loss journey, to have someone come up to you and say like, "Hey, man." I'm here every day and I see you here every day and I see what you're doing. I see the work that you're putting in, like, it's awesome. Keep going, right?
yeah,
And as rewarding as that was for someone to come up to me and say that, it's so strange that I want to say it to some people, but I don't,
yeah,
Because I feel
yeah.
like sometimes it it sits really well with people, but then there's other people that it doesn't sit so well with.
Mhm.
And you just never like, you never know. You don't want to offend somebody and make them, feel uncomfortable, and then they stop coming to the gym, and then, it
Yeah,
does exactly the opposite of what you were trying to do. I don't know. I feel like it's a very it's a very fine line that you have to toe, and it's just not something that I've ever wanted to toe. I just kind of, like, admire from the side and just, like,
yeah.
give a nod like, "Hey, man, I see you," but I personally, I've never gone up to somebody and kind of given that back to the community. Um, I do it more through Instagram
Yeah.
than in person.
I've only done it twice, and one time I did it, at my personal gym, the LA Fitness next to my house, and he was just, a guy that I work out with quite often, or that's in our workout group, and he was just having just that dialogue, that hopeless dialogue that people tend to think of a fitness journey like looking up a mountain, right? Like they look at how high the mountain is, and they're like, "Man, I'm never gonna get to the top of that mountain." Right? And so, but if you come around and you're like, "Hey, look, at a quarter mile, you're going to see a picnic area. Or at the next quarter mile, there will be a rest stop. Or at the next quarter mile, there will be a little slope." Right? And you look at it and you take, like, as you said, those small incremental changes and you break it down like that as like a day at a time, a rep at a time, a meal at a time, a step at a time. Right? Like when you take that small incremental approach, right? Like it completely changes the way that you look at things, right? And all of a sudden you start to look at the bigger picture and you start to like completely just change the entire way. And like you don't look at things as like, "Oh, this has to happen right away," or you don't get as discouraged. And it was just a guy that I literally just pulled up my Instagram before and after, and I showed it to him. And I'm like, "Look, man, I don't want to be that guy, but you're talking about losing 20 pounds. If I could do this, I know you can lose the 20 pounds." And luckily that went over well. And there are other times where I really do want to say something and I really do kind of like almost kind of take on the gimmick of the Captain America, and I want to bring out the shield and save the day and want to go up to every single person who I feel like needs it. That like, "Hey, this is what I did. How can I help you?" But again, just like how we said before, even if those doctors would have given us those advice at that time, it just would have fallen on deaf ears, right? So you're right. It's really a hard line and a fine line to balance. And you never want to be that guy, but you also want to help, right? So it's like just a catch 22.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So, there's one question that I kind of propose to everybody, and I like to propose it a little bit different. And with the way that the conversation has gone, we've kind of already talked about a bunch of things and a bunch of ways that you could help somebody. So I'm going to use kind of the latter of the two options, and instead I'm going to ask you what it means to you, Amir, to be doing it for yourself.
Yeah, man. So for me, doing it for myself, having gone through the journey that I had, it was really just figuring out who and why I'm doing this. Because as I've talked about in this, I've gone about doing this for girls. I've gone about doing this for family. I've gone about doing this out of spite to my friends, but I still wasn't happy, right? Like I had this ultimate weight goal in mind, and I had this physique in mind, and I got there, but it's like I was just waiting to step on the scale one day and for it to read happy, but it never did, and it never will, right? Like you can be 300 pounds, 200 pounds, 100 pounds. It doesn't matter until you really learn to like love and accept yourself. And it's a hard thing to do because first it starts with becoming accountable with yourself. And you really have to accept who you are. And it's so challenging to do to like accept like, hey, maybe I am the toxic person in this relationship. Hey, maybe I do have these weaknesses. Hey, maybe I do need to improve upon this. But like I'm a big Dead Poet Society guy. So they always say, what will be your verse in life? Right? Like in the grand poem or the grand story of life, what will be your verse in life? And it's such a true thing that like every day you wake up, you get to write a part of your verse. You get to write a new sonnet. You get to rewrite every chapter and rewrite every story or every like part of your book. You're the author. You control everything. And it's in every decision that you make. But you have to do it for you. Because after a while, you eventually date all the girls that you wanted to date, and then you're still not happy. And then you get the physique that you wanted, but you're still not happy. And your parents are happy that you lost the weight, but you're still not happy. And it's because you took all this time trying to make everybody else happy, but you forgot what makes you happy. What are you all about? Right? And that's what people they don't realize. This thing starts and ends with you. It doesn't matter if it's fitness, it doesn't matter if it's a business. It really doesn't matter. If you don't have passion for it and it's not something that you really, really, truly care about, if you're not willing to work out twice a day, if you're not willing to wake up in the wee hours, or if you're not willing to work out late at night after you've had a long day, it's there's nothing you can do because it's really just doing it for you. And that's when you figure out I'm not punishing myself, I'm bettering myself. I'm not this, I'm this. And you just change the whole way you think, you change the whole way that you live, and then you really become a person who truly loves, acknowledges, and accepts himself. And that's what doing it for yourself is for me.
That was honestly perfect. I couldn't have thought of anything better. So the last thing that I would like to ask from you, which I should have just asked you beforehand, so we could have ended on such a great note, but this will be a great note as well. Where can people find you? Where can they see what you're up to? Where can they see some of these transformation pictures that we talked about? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Captain America. So CaptainAmirica. I did have a YouTube channel back in the day. Who knows if I bring it back? But for now, Instagram is where you can find all my fitness stuff at.
Right on. Appreciate it, man. Well, I just want to say again, thank you so much. Great conversation. And I look forward to staying connected with you.
Yeah, again, thank you so much, Ian. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it and really just appreciate you giving the time to give me this platform.
All right, my friends. That is my interview with Aamir. And I just want to take a minute to say thank you to you guys, the listeners, for coming and hanging out with us. I really enjoyed this conversation with Aamir. We had a great time during the conversation. I'm hoping that you were able to tell that, but I'm sure it was quite obvious, given even just the amount of time that we were talking for. So thank you again to Aamir for stopping by, being on the podcast. Thank you, the listeners, for coming and hanging out with us. If you could, do me a quick favor, just leave a review on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, whichever way you are consuming this podcast. Just leave me a little note and let me know that you are enjoying it or what you would like to hear from the podcast. That's it. That is all I have for you. I hope you enjoy. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week.